thousand views on this video. I'll pay for 10 trees to be planted in the Amazon rainforest.
Welcome to episode 4 of Best Kept Secrets Travel Podcast. My name's Morgan.
And I'm Will, and on this episode we're going to talk about haggling and the different stages that we go through when we want to buy a product and try and get the best value for money we can when we're on our travels.
And before we start this episode, remember to please like, comment and subscribe. And if you're watching us on a podcast, you'd be listening to us then, but follow us.
I'm going to have to cut that out.
No? Don't need to cut that out. I thought that was fantastic.
Best friends, and that's for life. Who stay traveling? I'm talking worldwide, 65 countries between the two. Every moment is so unbelievable. Sharing the best kept secrets about the trips and mistakes they made that they can't forget. So tell me if you're ready for a time to remember as they gear up for the next adventure. Yeah. Woo! Best kept secrets travel.
So we're going to talk about a few different points during this episode. So like, what do you want to buy?
Where are you going to buy it?
What your budget is?
What are your tactics when you get to your location to buy it?
Do you have morals?
And are you overall safe in this process of purchasing the product?
Will, what do you want to buy?
So when we're traveling, one of the most common things that you're going to want to buy is water, liquid, or any food. Mm-hmm. That sort of foundation. Other than that, you might be buying a bit of memorabilia or things to take back to your family, different things that you've seen.
Yeah, so food in general is not a common thing that people barter for, and it's considered rude to barter for, but I know Vietnam specifically, food is fair game and people barter for that all day.
I think it really depends, especially as when you're coming to food. If you're going directly into a restaurant, it's quite hard to haggle, especially if you've already eaten the food and they put the bill in front of you. That's especially rude to barter for it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if you're at a big market stall, then you can get away a bit more with haggling, especially in some of the different countries. I know even in England you can haggle slightly at some of the different stands.
Where would you want to buy it?
When I'm trying to buy any item, I go through that process of how many locations are there to buy it. If I'm at a refuge up in a mountain in the Alps, I know generally, unless somehow there's a spa or a Londis at 4,000 metres.
Cusco is very surprising with the amount of stuff actually there.
Exactly. But then, if you've got one place to buy it from, you want to make sure you're actually able to buy it from there, because if you really annoy the person who's in there, and they say, oh fine, I'm not selling it to you, then you're pretty stuffed. But if you're in a refuge, then you might have to pay ludicrous amount just have a beer or water. Whereas if you're, like when we're in Cusco and Peru, to buy water, you have loads of options. You have a few guys on the street trying to sell it to you. You have the different sort of corner shops, local shops, and then you have the slightly bigger supermarkets. And they're all going to come at different price points and different quality of products and different safety of product, because sadly you do have stereotype of you have these guys on the streets. I know in Morocco I've had the problem before, and whenever I buy anything off someone on the street or some of the local guys, I don't want to put them down, because at the end of the day they're trying to make money. But I have to come across, especially on water, because that's the easiest one to do it to, is always check the seal around the top of water, because it is all drinks, but water is the one where at the end of the day it's harder to replicate Coke or a Fanta, especially if you can see through a plastic bottle. Whereas with water, it is possible to glue the seal back on or to push on a different cap and use tap water. Yeah. And the main thing is, during any process when you're travelling, is you need to constantly think about your safety.
And it's very important to actually understand your buying power. So as you were saying, if you are in the mountains and you have no choice, then you really can't have to pay what they ask you to pay. Whereas if you are surprisingly in Cusco, then as you have more options, you have more power that you can barter with, and you can possibly go to, as you were saying, different options at that point. So it's important to actually work that out before you go and start bartering. Exactly,
and that comes straight into our next point, which is talking about budget. Because in our first episode we talk about planning, and one of the main things about planning is, if you're going up to the Alps and your main goal for the whole trip is you're climbing, let's say Mont Blanc, and you're going through these refuges, you know that a beer is going to cost you probably 8 to 12 euros just for a can of beer. That should already be budgeted for, and you should already mentally take that as a note within your planning stage. Whereas if you're going,
assuming that beer is 100% what you're trying to have.
Yeah, but if someone's mountain, you come down, and you think, oh, let's celebrate, let's have a beer. Maybe maybe you don't drink and you want water, apple juice or whatever, but that should realistically be in your budget. Whereas if you're going to these different locations, if you're traveling around Southeast Asia, if you're going to Australia, if you're going to South America, anywhere around Europe, you'll have a lot of variety, you'll have different choices, different shops will have different budgets already around. And food and drink is generally something which is quite hard to haggle with anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas as soon as you start looking at clothing, local stands then become a bigger player in the haggling world because they really want you to buy it off them, whereas and they're often the people running the shop and in there are also the owner of the shop, whereas if you go to some of the brands, won't name drop too many, but if you know, we're in Cusco, there's a Helly Hansen, North Face and all that stuff because they know there's hikers around there, and those people in the shop have very limiting power in terms of what discount they can give you. Their job doesn't completely, and their sort of livelihood doesn't depend on you buying that one jacket that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas us going and buying the jumper really benefits on the local community.
Yeah. So if you were maybe going for an item like this, what would your budget that you'd be going in with be?
So these 3 items I bought all at the same time.
Okay, so they were a bundle. Were they sold separately, or did you try and barter them together?
They were being sold as individual items, and I wanted to buy something to take home.
Yes.
I didn't know this is what I was going to buy. That's a very different thing, is going into a shop just to see what they have, and then once you're in there, I then decided, I really like this item, really like this item, really like this one. And the benefit of buying multiple is all of a sudden your haggling power jumps up because they know that overall they have a chance of making a bigger profit, but you overall have more power in trying to crunch the numbers.
And is this very common in Madagascar? Is this like lots of people selling these? So could you move between different people when bartering or not?
Yeah, exactly. So these are handmade products. There are a lot of stands doing them. Generally, if I'm going for something like this and I know a shop sells it and I know a guy on the street sells it, I'll try and go to the guy on the street as long as, everything seems fine. Some countries, even as a tourist, you can get in trouble if you're buying for someone on the street and they're not legally allowed to sell there, so you need to check the rules on that. But the benefit of these were lots of people are selling them. I was buying them in bulk. They wanted the money, and that gives you a lot more power.
Yeah, and you're supporting the local culture, which is always, as a tourist, makes you feel better, that you're actually contributing to the local people.
Yeah, there's a big factor of that as well, but at the same time you also need to be a bit of a conscious buyer and making sure that you're not actually supporting bad industries which abuse young kids making these products and stuff like that. But these items, at the end of the episode, I'll go into a tiny bit more detail why the three different sets of items were very different scenarios in the purchase world on holiday. This is why it all sort of rolls into the tactics of purchasing, because I think one of the things which I remember I've taught you a bit more about when we've been travelling, whenever we approach a shop, there are so many different ways to go about it. You could casually go past and make them try and draw you in.
Yeah.
If you slightly window shop and you've ever had a guy trying to come out and really draw you in, generally means 1, they're a really good salesman and they're just absolutely crying to get you in.
Yeah.
2, they really need your money, which then instantly gives you more power the second you step in the shop. But give them a bit of a push back first. Then go in the shop if you know there's something in there you want, and then you can be a bit more aggressive.
Yeah. One of my favourite points is when you're walking around different market stalls and you see, or one of my favourite lines is when you see the same item in multiple different stores. I like making sure that the seller has seen me looking at similar items on a different stall, and then when it actually comes to negotiating, essentially going, you know what, because you're my favourite, and then giving an offer at that point, because then you're complimenting him and sort of putting him at ease and making it feel like you're building a relationship and make it feel like you actually have a friendship there. Yeah. In the hope that maybe he'll give you a better price.
Yeah. I think I'd say if I was going to give our viewers and listeners at this point in time, one of my number 1 top tips for and one of our best kept secrets for haggling, is if you're going to a market, which is very common when you're traveling, walk around the whole market and eye up. Let's say we're going to food market in Barcelona and Morgan really wants strawberries, which is a common occurrence.
Oh, that's nice.
The best thing to do is to walk around and try and see how many stands you see with strawberries, because what they'll do is, one, give you a rough estimate of the price and see if there's a differentiation in price, but also quality and volume of product.
Yeah.
Because you might find one stand selling, a tiny punnet for €3 and the next one along selling a massive one for $2.50, and they're nicer and look better, blah, blah, blah. And then at least you haven't regretted that further on the line. That also gives you a lot more power.
Yeah.
Because if I see two stalls in the same marketplace and I know I'm going to haggle,
Yeah.
because I'm happy to haggle at that spot, then I can get an offer off the first one, say, oh yeah, I'm going to come back to you in a bit. They know in their head, oh, chances are they're not going to come back to you. Then you go to the next market stall, see if they give you a price, compete with them. If they've given you a low price, and go back to your original one and say, hey, they've given me this price, but I'd really like to buy off you. And you can actually get market stalls competing.
Yeah.
I think we've even seen it when we were a lot younger and we were in France. There were 3 stands trying to sell the same really cheap watch, and it got to a point where the guy just gave the guy in our year the watch for free, just out of wanting to beat the other 2 guys on the market stand. Yes, morally that's not really the great thing to do, but it was super interesting to see to happen that they were that competitive about just trying to win the deal, because it got to a point they were like, oh, €1 and I'll sell it to you, and he just gave it to him free just to win the whole argument.
Yeah.
That's a whole different side of haggling, and that's very much the sellers just wanting to beat each other.
Well, I think you briefly touched upon it, that actually and this is probably a best kept secret again, is one of the most powerful things you can do when you're haggling is walking away, and be prepared to actually walk away.
Yeah.
So you can act and walk away, but also genuinely be prepared to walk away and not buy if they're not budging.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very important skill that you need to learn. So don't be too sold on the product that you're trying to get. And this is where, as you said again, do your research, walk around, try and find different places, and then you'll know that you can walk away from this shop knowing that you can try again in this shop.
And especially, side note to that is, if there's something specific, really specific you want, and you're sat in a bar with a mate or at the hostel with someone beforehand, ask the people working there, especially if they're local. I know it happened in Morocco when I was there. I asked the locals saying, I really want this, this and this. What is a local's price for this? And what's a tourist price? And normally it's about 10 to 20 times the price.
Yeah.
And where is the best place to buy it? And they almost always be able to give you the best tip. If not, sometimes they'd even say, oh, say my name, and then instantaneously walk in there giving you a seriously, seriously good price. That can make a huge difference. I think we've even had before where you go and want to buy products, and then after tours, we've been walked to certain shops just because it's their mate who's selling it, and then all of a sudden you're given an insanely good price because the person running the shop knows that you've come to their shop specifically to help their mate and everything. So there is a big community feel, and if you're friendly, then you're...
And they're holding your hand there, because at the end of the day they likely get commission, because it's a big thing in Thailand with tuk-tuk drivers, is that they'll offer you a really cheap price, and they say if you go into this tailor shop we get free gasoline. So the tuk-tuk driver gets free petrol, and we have to awkwardly sit in this tailor shop whilst these guys are trying to sell us suits and get us jackets made and things like that. And the tuk-tuk driver says you don't need to buy anything, which strictly speaking is true. But I've definitely heard stories where people have actually been locked in these tailor shops and like, you need to buy something, otherwise I won't let you leave. But this doesn't happen very often. Yeah. And I think most of the time you go in there, you just have a look around. And in my personal experience, we just had a look around, and there were some nice suits and jackets, but that wasn't what we were out there to do that day. And we just walked in, stayed in for 5 minutes and then left. Yeah. And it was fine, but the tuk-tuk driver got the free gasoline. So that sometimes they are getting a commission and they are getting something out of taking you to specific places, which is always important to remember.
I think if I was going to give everyone my number one tip for haggling, and it's something I've convinced you to do more and more, it links also into safety, but it's such a amazing, aggressive way of haggling, and it's one of the ways I've saved the most money whenever I've tried to haggle. If you know the item you want, you know your budget, you know roughly how much it is in the shop already before walking in, like if you've gone in the shop the day before just to almost scout it out, walk in that shop with, hopefully it's easier if you're wearing trousers and you've got multiple pockets, or if you've got a bag on you, if you've got a fanny pack, split your money into different amounts and you know exactly how much is in each pocket.
Because you do the classic line of, this is all I have.
You've got, this is all I have, and you can be 10 times more aggressive than anyone. And if they say no and you say, oh, but this is really all I have, you then turn around and you go, oh, I'm really sorry then, and now I've got to go. How many times that's worked for me in terms of just cutting the price in half, getting even lower than that. Because they, at the end of the day, I mean, they're only going to sell you the product the majority of the time if they know they're making money, or if they're just trying to get rid of stock.
Or they're trying to spite their friend.
Exactly, or they're trying to spite their friend. And by dividing up your money, you're a lot safer, because if you have some of the country you've been to, we've been amazed, we've taken out spending money out of an ATM just in case we need cash. Then all of a sudden out of the ATM comes a massive wad of notes. That massive wad of cash just instantaneously looks sort of amazing, and it also makes you a bigger target if you're trying to get that out of your bag, out of your wallet, out of anything, and they can see exactly how much you've got. There's no worse feeling than trying to haggle, saying like, oh, I don't really have that amount of money, and the thing's only costing you £4, and out of your wallet you pull out a wad of £200-300 worth of notes. But that also then makes you a target for the second you leave, especially if you know you're at some market stores, you've got pickpockets around. You do sadly see it quite a bit, but that's just one of the main things. Is it's a massive safety thing, but it's super aggressive play just by splitting up your cash. And that's one of the things we'll probably go into more in the future, is when I split up my cash when we're traveling in certain countries, I even put rainy day or safety money just in case something goes severely wrong. I can stick that in a plastic bag, wrap it over just so water can't ever get in, then stick it under the insole of my shoe.
Oh yeah, I always split lots of my money up, and I have different cards with different, like post office travel cards, and I have different versions with different amounts in different places.
And this does help with haggling, but this also links completely into the safety side of it. It is when you go, it's more so to a market store, but whenever you do go out into some of these towns or cities, more so late at night, you need to be aware of, are you making yourself a target?
Yeah, which we will talk about in other episodes. So be sure to actually follow us and subscribe so you can see those episodes. I feel like we should move on to morals. Do you have morals?
Sometimes. So one of the massive things I think you need to really think about, especially if you're coming from quite a wealthy country, you know, we're from the United Kingdom, a lot of you guys will be from the UK or potentially other wealthy countries, is when you do go to some of these countries, 50p to you might not seem a lot. That's, you know, that's a pack of crisps or a chocolate bar or a Freddo.
How? What? No, you've triggered me now. You've triggered me now.
Whereas when you go to these other countries which you're visiting, like parts of Southeast Asia, parts of Africa, parts of South America, 50p can really be a lot of money to some people. That can be the difference between them eating for a day or 2 days or 3 days to not eating at all. So please make sure when you think about whether you're going to haggle, don't take the mick, because there have been occasions, and I'm going to use this one here, where this, funny enough, I did buy Madagascar as well, but this was, I went to go and try and find something from a small...
What is it made out of?
So it's made out of little tin can. I'm going to bring it up to the camera. Why on with that?
Freddo's 30p tricks me. I had to check.
It's made out of a tin can. It's a small car. And the reason I bought this, and the reason why I'm bringing up morals, is I think it probably cost. They tried to charge me the equivalent of about 60p, probably less than that. I was in the middle of nowhere in Madagascar. It was a tiny little side store street village, and this father had been making lots of tools out of different cans and objects, and a lot of them were quite significant, big, some foot long, etc., and unbelievably detailed. But then next to him, he had his little son, and his son had been learning to make tin cars for the first time, and this was one of his first cars. And when you realise how small relative to your income buying something like this is, but how much it can impact that kid, help him, give him some money, and also encourage him that he's doing the right thing. I think he tried to charge me 60p, and I decided I was going to give him 2 or 3 times the amount of that, just because I knew it would really help him. And over in Madagascar, it's probably one of the most third world countries that I've been to, and just seeing the smile on the kid's face and the dad smiling when we bought it off the kid made a huge difference.
And in that scenario, you know the money's actually going to him, which is very important.
Oh yeah, funny up in Madagascar as well, we tipped a guide.
Have you been to Madagascar?
Even then we tipped a guide in Madagascar because we knew he wasn't getting paid that much by the hotel or whoever we booked through, and we literally watched him take that tip across the road and buy a live chicken, and walk off and hop on the back of his motorbike just with a chicken under his arm. And instantaneously you just saw the smile on his face. He waved bye to us, thanking us, and drove off.
So did you buy him a new friend or food?
It was very much going to be food. Really sorry if that upsets anyone. But you just sometimes see the impact on you actually helping some of these communities. And that's where, if you go into one of these bigger shops, or you go into an area where you can see there's a lot of money going to that area, then I don't really mind people haggling that much. But when you go into some of these severely poorer countries, and you know that you giving that tiny bit more, you just not deciding not to haggle at all, is going to make a huge difference. And me not having a chocolate bar to me actually helping a family eat and have drink or whatever makes such a big difference. And yeah, there's a bit of a selfish feel-good factor about it, but don't haggle when you really know that by haggling you're taking away such a drastic amount from someone. That's just my personal opinion on it. I know some people watching might think otherwise. I know Morgan's key thing that he always thinks about when we're travelling is, what is the most dangerous thing that we can do whilst on that holiday, and how can I put Will's life at risk in the most stupid way?
No, that's not right, because my mother tells you that you're meant to be looking after me, so that's on you.
One of the things you always need to think about is your safety whenever you're trying to buy anything.
It is very important, and I take it very seriously.
Don't go into a bag shop in the middle of Morocco trying to find some knockoff Louis Vuitton or Hermes bag and then say, oh, but do you have this bag? They say no, and then you decide to get in their family friend's cab, which isn't a licensed cab, get driven out of Marrakesh, get out of the car, there are 5 men there, and then you go into a warehouse. I'm telling you a story because I know somebody's done it. It's not a smart move.
Did he get the bag there?
She.
Did she?
2 women did it.
Okay, 2 of them. Did they get the bag?
Yes.
Well, what's the issue?
It's just you're instantaneously putting yourself into a dangerous spot.
You're putting yourself into serious unnecessary risk at that point.
There's no point taking on it. Don't go down a dark alleyway on your own thinking, oh, at the end I'm going to find a brand new handmade leather wallet, unless you know for a fact that someone you trust is taking you down there. Just don't ever put yourself in unnecessary risk. That's the main point. I know you joke about it, but
and I do, and sometimes it is actually hard to tell. But I'm trying not to completely diverge, but because especially in these selling situations, these people come across as friends, and they put you at ease. Sometimes you can be put into a false sense of security and then make unnecessary risks that you shouldn't. You have to remember to look after yourself, because at the end of the day, these people aren't going to look after you. They are not actually your friend, even if they come across as your friend. Only you and possibly your family.
Yeah, and we've been to countries where,
Look
you know,
after
the
yourself.
new iPhone's the equivalent of a third of a yearly income to some people we've met. If not, actually, I've been to some countries where an iPhone's more than the yearly income. And it's just, you need to sometimes put yourself in the perspective of their shoes. As bad as it sounds, you need to think, right, what on me do I have that is stupidly valuable to other people? I've even been in shops with you making sure that I take a purposely cheap phone just in case something happens, or if someone even pickpockets me. I think one of the funniest things I've done was when we were in Brazil, I bought a really old BlackBerry. The only thing I put on the whole phone was I didn't even put a password on it as a joke. Only thing I put in there was in the messages I saved a contact. I'm not going to say the word, but it was beep you for taking my phone. And that was the only thing in my whole BlackBerry.
And it didn't get stolen?
No one stole it, but I just thought in my head, if someone steals my phone, that's the only thing that's going to be in there if I get pickpocketed or just like stupidly mugged. I just thought that'd be a funny thing.
And what if they only spoke Portuguese?
They might look up what it means. Hopefully they know what it means if they're trying to steal phones off people. But there may be some people viewing this episode who's wondering, what is this object in front of us? And this is some type of conch shell. Let's see if I've got that right.
Wondering.
The reason I've got this here is you don't always need to buy an item. There are some countries where you may go around a market stall and every single market stall seems to have the exact same identical shell and they're all selling them at extortionate prices, and you wonder, where does everyone get the same product from? They all look amazing and identical. I don't know how to pick. You go down to the local beach, and funny enough, they're everywhere. You do not need to spend 10 to 15 quid on a shiny shell or whatever shell. Sometimes you can buy it,
but maybe they're dangerous and they get cleaned.
No, I just found this shell. It's been with me for maybe 11 years, 12 years.
Was this
great.
Madagascar again?
No, I actually don't know where it's from. Not a clue. It's actually great for punching.
I was about to say, that is, if you just sharpen the spikes on the end, you'd be a good gladiator there. I actually had another story to do with safety and bargaining, haggling in Colombia, where I wasn't desperate, but I was thirsty for water, and I was in the middle of a town, so you could get water everywhere, and I went to one of the stalls to go haggle. I wasn't planning to haggle. I knew how much water cost in the sort of pharmacy place, in the supermarket, but there wasn't one conveniently nearby, and this was the first place I walked past when I wanted water. And I asked for essentially to pay $1 for a litre of water, which I thought was fair enough. The supermarket's a bit cheaper, the pharmacy was also slightly cheaper. This was a market stall, so I did that. The guy quoted me $4 equivalent, and I was just like, I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting to pay that much. I only have $1. And he sort of puffed his chest out, put his arms out, and screamed at me, "You cannot do this. This is Colombia." What? And like he was starting to walk towards me and like be all macho, and I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't want to buy this anymore." And I just started walking away. And as I walk away, and again, walking away is very important, but this is obviously for a different reason, he kept shouting at me and then started shouting at me in Spanish and was like, "This is Colombia, you cannot do this here." And I still to this day don't think anything I did was unreasonable.
Sometimes they're just trying to scare you into paying that extra money. That's the difference. That's just a bit more of an extreme case. And hopefully Morgan hasn't put you off Colombia, because I know a lot of people who love it, and Morgan absolutely loved it.
Colombia is honestly one of my favourite countries I've been to, and I really want to go back and spend more time there just exploring all the amazing things they have there.
But that is a bit more of an extreme case in terms of
very much so.
In terms of the haggling world and trying to buy anything out there.
And I genuinely didn't feel any physical threat. He was just shouting at me. He was bigger than me, and yes, it's Colombia, but this was in public. It was in the middle of the day. I honestly didn't feel like anything was going to happen to me, and all I did was I went and I walked to the closest open shop and then stayed in there till he stopped shouting. Waited till he'd lost interest, and then I walked away.
Imagine if he just marched in the shop. This is Colombia!
And it happened to also be his shop. Then I'd be in trouble.
He just walks in, this is my shop!
Yeah, just pushes me through the back. No. Yeah, but everything was okay, and I honestly wouldn't have done anything different if I did it again, but it's quite an interesting story.
No, that's quite a funny. I can't really think of a time where I've got.
Have you had any funny haggling stories?
I've had a time actually where I didn't want to haggle just because I thought it was a fair price and I just wanted the product. And they got annoyed that I hadn't haggled. Some market stalls are just passionate and actually enjoy it.
No, £5, no £3, £4.
No, they actually do sometimes say like, "Oh, you're not gonna haggle with it." And it's like, no, fine. I've traded with people before. When I've been in Africa, the guy liked my watch, and I knew I only bought it for about £2.50, and I just wanted one of the carved stone statues he had. And I just looked at him, and he'd been looking at my watch, and I was thinking, like, it wasn't that expensive. It was cheaper than the price he's telling me for the carved rock. So I just said, like, oh, we just trade that for the watch. And he went, yeah. And I just gave him the watch. And it was like day before I was leaving anyway, so I wasn't that fussed about not having the watch anymore. I just walked away just thinking, like, the most bizarre experience of my life.
Well, I feel like that for him could be getting watches like that, and especially Western looking watches, even if to you it's not something expensive, it's probably quite hard for him to actually get hold of.
Oh yeah, he might suddenly think it's really expensive. For all I know, it died of the battery the next day, or it's lasted 4 years.
Regardless, it's a Western looking watch, which probably is different to what he has access to. How much would you pay for this? No, do you want to buy this?
No, because I already own it. This is Colombia!
How much?
Try to shell. It's a nice shell. Buy or sell. Don't be so shellfish.
That's not even a good joke.
See what I did there? I'll stick sound over that. The amazing thing about picking up a conch shell off the beach and not buying it is that they're actually musical as well, because yeah, that's good.
Oh wow. Amazing.
That's all we've got time for this episode 4 on haggling. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've learned a tiny bit. Stick any questions you have in the comment section below. Any feedback you have, we'll be very grateful for, whether you liked it, whether you thought we rambled on too much, whatever you want, because at the end of the day, we're not going to improve unless we get a bit of insight from you guys. At the end of the day, we're also just learning.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of a new podcast. We can only hopefully improve.
And I think you should subscribe, because it doesn't cost you very much.
You should like, you should comment, you should subscribe, you should ring that notification bell.
And the best way you can genuinely help us is, if you think we've given good information, just comment and tell us what we've said that's good. And if you like it, just tell one of your mates and get them to come over and watch it too.
If we get 1,000 views on this video, I will
play the conch shell more often.
Pay for 10 trees to be planted in the Amazon rainforest. 1,000 views on this video, I'll pay for 10 trees to be planted in the Amazon rainforest. Because you know what? It's got nothing to do with haggling.
Save the world.
We just want the views. We're saving the world, offsetting our carbon footprint and your carbon footprint of watching this video. So, like, subscribe, comment below. Have fun.
And we'll see you
Haggle.
next week.
Haggle. Buy or sell. Do you want to buy this? You can't have it. It's not for sale. You want these? Not for sale. You want this? For sale. £1. Morgan's for sale. I'll post him to you.
And if you didn't you think I was going to hit you? And if any of you wants to haggle for this mug, go for it. In the comments. We'll clean it before we give it to you.
Yeah, comments below. You can haggle for this. If we get enough interest, we'll stick this exact mug on eBay and we'll both sign it. And yeah.
They're not really haggling for it then. I think we should get them to haggle for it on YouTube.
Yeah, haggle for it on YouTube. And we might pick one of these.
We
will clean it before it gets sent.
And we don't want money. We want you to actually trade something with us. This is one of our first mugs. We want you to trade something.
Yeah, we want to trade. YouTube comment section's becoming Craigslist. Haggle for this mug. We want best offer. And then you can have it. End of the episode.
Yeah, let's make it happen. I hope that you can handle going on adventures, best kept secret travels. Yeah, all over the globe, having fun, you know the deal. Amazing secret locations, hang out with Morgan and Will. Educate and entertain, haggle in the market, sharing their experiences. Time to get it started. Let's go.